Hi, everyone. This is Megan.
And this is Steven.
And this is the Synchrony Podcast, where we talk about transforming apostolic dating culture and ending loneliness in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Happy Saturday.
We are recording 2 days later than we normally do.
Yeah, so here's hoping this goes up on time.
Yeah.
We'll have tomorrow afternoon to get this done.
I need to sound balance it tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yep.
We're tightening up our timeline a little bit this week.
Yeah.
But we got sick with preschool cold number 297.
For real.
Whatever. I should tell people we love our children. I feel like we've started off the last handful of podcasts like with some complaint about our kids.
Our children.
No, they're the best. They're the coolest kids ever. They're brilliant and funny and absolutely have made us better people.
Yeah.
Our daughter is going to run the world one day probably. And our son is like creative and sweet and snuggly right now. And it's all the best things.
A little bit of attitude though.
Yeah, but still, all the best things. They're the best. Fletcher's newest thing is everything is the bestest in his whole life.
Yes.
He's 3.
Yeah.
So he'll be like, Mommy, you're the bestest mommy in my whole life.
That's right.
Or like, Daddy, you're my bestest daddy in my whole life.
But then also like in the same like breath, he's like, Daddy, this ketchup is the bestest ketchup in my whole life.
Right. The bar is really low. Like he's really, that label can go for just about anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want people to know that we don't dislike being parents.
No, we love it.
It's one of the highlights of our lives. Matchmakers, parents, those are pretty cool titles to have. Should we take a minute to talk about our sponsors, our partners, our friends?
Yep.
We're talking about Cafe 117. Clink. There we go. Cafe 117, if you haven't heard us talk about them, is an incredible apostolic-owned coffee company. They produce premium single origin and blended coffees, and a pretty big portion of their proceeds goes into some apostolic aid organizations that do a lot of good. So we love them. That work is vitally needed right now. Not just the coffee. I mean, the coffee is vitally needed for us.
The coffee is vitally needed for different reasons.
Yeah,
but
the apostolic aid work is needed. So if you love to do good for the world while doing well for yourself, I would go get you some coffee and you can get a little discount at the link.
Go grab it.
Yep. So, babe, I think it is time for us to circle back to some old stomping grounds.
Yeah.
Some well-trodden paths of our early podcast days.
Yeah. I was actually going back and listening to some of our earlier episodes.
Really?
I mean, that was mainly for audio reasons, but
Oh yeah.
and I remember our first episode, we're like, "Hi, this is Steven. And this is Megan." We're like talking way more intentional and slow.
Yeah. Now
I'm
we're like,
oh God, this is terrible to listen to.
yeah. Thank you all for sticking with us.
Yeah.
It's been a learning curve. And I think we're going to say some stuff here that we probably said a version of in the past, but I think it's worth repeating. We definitely have a lot more experience under our belts now.
Yeah.
So what I want to talk about is basically why matchmaking.
Yeah.
As a dating strategy. Why use that now in the modern world that we live in? What's the value of it? Why should people consider this?
What it's all about.
And if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you probably already know that we're matchmakers, but just to kind of like completely clarify that, like Steven and I have been working to build more or less an apostolic matchmaking agency for the past couple of years.
Yep.
And so not only do we produce the podcast and we have social media and we talk a lot about singleness and loneliness and dating, part of that mission is to immediately help the people who have been, I'm going to say like left behind in the apostolic dating culture. I don't mean left behind in like the weird sense of like the creepy Armageddon movies that we all had to watch in the late 90s.
I was like, where are you going with it? But yeah.
No. It was terrifying. This is a collective trauma of that whole situation. I don't mean left behind in the sense of like intentionally, right? Like left. More that our dating culture hasn't served them,
Yeah.
right? It has not benefited them in the way that it should. And so not only do we want to change the culture by having conversations on the podcast and helping people rethink their dating strategies, we need a more immediate way to address what people are experiencing in their dating lives right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all this time put into this process, when people come to you, because you actually do more of, I would say, like the salesy, if you want to call it that, talk for us.
What do you mean?
Like I'm not, Pat Lantoni would call you a galvanizer, right?
Oh, okay.
Where you can take something that you're passionate about and put it in front of somebody and have this great rich conversation with them where you really get them on board with whatever it is.
I mean, if the dopamine strikes, I could sell a rock, but
yeah, that whole type of work makes me want to crawl out of my skin and hide under said rock and never emerge.
Yeah.
So you end up having more of the conversations, like I would say, like the promotional conversations about synchrony. When people give you the like, wow, matchmaking, really? Like, what do you say to them usually?
I basically just tell them that it's just a service to help people find people they normally wouldn't be able to find.
Right.
And I generally end up comparing it to like a realtor or a fishing guide or something like that. Like, we're not saying that you don't know how to fish. Mm-hmm. We're just showing you where the fish are in an area you normally don't go.
Right.
Sorry, not trying to compare you to game fish or anything like that, but it's just a service to be able to help people make connections in states that they normally wouldn't be able to reach, or go to conferences to actually bump into these people either.
Yeah, because what we've learned, what we've confirmed, I guess, through all the research that we've done and the people that we've spoken to is that most of the time, especially for singles who have never been married, this can vary for singles who have been married and have gone through like a divorce or a loss, right? For singles who have never been married, the issues usually boil down to a lack of access.
Yeah.
So there are no singles in my area, right? The nearest church is hours away from me. I live in a rural area. I live in a remote state. I live in a very small district. Insert X, Y, and Z reason. There's no one in their local church or the surrounding churches that's eligible for them. Or it's a lack of time and resources, right? If you're a single person who has been very career driven or very academically driven, or if you've had to just shoulder the responsibility of caring for a loved one or supporting a family or doing whatever you've had to do.
Or even like over committing to stuff in church.
Yeah.
And not to make that sound like a bad thing, but like if you're single and you have a available time, it's easy for you to say yes to a lot more that some people won't. Sure. And then you end up not ever having time or the opportunity to go out of town to go meet people. Right.
So most people who are in our apostolic dating ecosystem, right, have a few options available to them if they do not have someone in their local church who is dateable, right?
Yep.
So outside of synchrony, the available options are travel.
Yeah.
Travel to other churches, travel to conferences, go, on missions trips, go to places where apostolics are. That's a great thing to do. I think it fills your soul. It makes great connections. You get fed spiritually. You do kingdom work, like 10 out of 10, highly recommend, but it's expensive and time consuming.
Yeah.
And not everyone can do that.
Yeah.
Or can't do it frequently enough to guarantee that they're going to end up bumping into somebody. Right.
Yeah.
Another strategy is, Facebook dating, right?
Yeah.
Or social media dating in general. And by that, I don't mean like the Facebook dating, because I think there is like a Facebook dating platform.
Oh, I didn't know there was.
It's like Facebook Marketplace, but for dating. I don't know what it's called.
Hopefully less sketchy.
Somebody confirm or deny that that's a thing. I'm pretty sure I've heard about that. But yeah, social media is rife with all the challenges that social media has always been rife with, right?
Yeah.
Which is fake profiles, Most of the time, if people are dating on social media, like on Facebook, it's within a specific Facebook group. We've worked with a few of the admins of those groups who work tremendously hard to try to keep people safe and protected in the groups that they moderate.
Yeah.
And boy, do they have a challenge on their hands.
Oh yeah. Especially like when you have thousands of people in these groups. Some of them have 7,000-10,000 people in these groups.
Right.
That's just hard to moderate in general.
And you can't moderate what goes on in private messages once people have connected with someone.
Yeah.
So that can be challenging. That can be intimidating to some people. It can be uncomfortable for some people. Some people don't want to use social media, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people aren't a big fan right now of the meta apps in general, which, you know, Instagram and Facebook are some of the two biggest places where that kind of connection is possible.
Yeah.
So that might be a barrier. Social media doesn't work for everyone. And then we have a few different forms of online dating.
Yeah.
Outside of Synchrony. And the available options right now are things like the Apostolic Singles Network. There's a new dating app that has been getting a lot of buzz right now, which I haven't done a ton of research into, but it's out there too. I think they launched recently. There's probably several versions of that where it's like similar to sort of the worldly dating apps and dating forums. They've created apostolic analogs for those.
Yeah.
I'm not here to throw anybody's work under the bus because I think every person who's involved in trying to get resources to singles deserves a medal.
Yeah.
Right. At a high level, what are your thoughts on dating apps and dating sites for apostolics?
I mean, it's the structure of social media in general is about what can I put on display.
Mm-hmm.
I can choose what I put on display for people. I choose what people see.
Yeah.
And that's how it is for Facebook, dating apps, and even modern dating culture outside the church too. We talk a lot about trying to get away from like a Tinder culture.
Mm-hmm.
And what basically the moral of how all this connects is like, it's very visually based.
Yeah.
And so Tinder itself is literally like swiping left and right just based on looks. And so Facebook, a lot of people might make snap judgment calls off of whether or not to continue talking to someone just because they might not be photogenic.
Right.
And so that's kind of difficult.
I think the other thing is that with dating apps and dating sites, the burden of the research is still on the individual seeker.
Yeah.
Right. And for anyone who's been involved in this, what that might entail is like you're on a dating app or a dating site. You see a profile of someone that you like. So you go look it over. You like the look of them. You like the stuff on their profile. You like or heart or swipe right or message them or however you connect, however the app or whatever site allows you to connect. And then comes the arduous process of trying to suss out whether or not this person is even remotely feasible for you.
Yeah.
And you have to get answers to all the questions of, is this person willing to move? Does this person want kids? Is this person a fan of me working in this ministry?
Yeah. Can they communicate? Are they actually the person that they say they are?
Right. Does this person have a great relationship with their ministry? Like, you have to start digging in and asking those questions that are going to let you know whether or not this person is even a candidate for a dating relationship. So I think the starting point for those sites and apps is always physical, like it is with the world, right?
Yep.
Physical in terms of like what someone looks like, their appearance. And then the burden of research is on the individual, and there's no standard for what information somebody is going to divulge or how accurate it's going to be.
Yeah.
So it is possible to find someone using any one of those strategies.
Absolutely.
And there have been, thank God, there have been plenty of people who have met wonderful partners on Facebook groups, on dating sites and apps, on, the Singles Network, at conferences, by word of mouth, by bumping into someone in a grocery store. Like, all of those things are possible ways to meet someone.
Yeah, absolutely.
What we hear from the hundreds of singles who we speak to, who, you know, are coming to us specifically because those things don't work for them, right? So like, you know, there's some bias here, I guess. But they're coming to us and saying that ultimately those things might provide them with slightly more access.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily help with better selection.
Mm-hmm.
Access is not the only thing that people are struggling with in our dating culture. That might be one layer, but the layer under that is that even when people have access to dating partners, it is very difficult to make a good choice.
Yeah. Well, and going back to the question of like why matchmaking, right? Or like what I tell people whenever they ask me about matchmaking is about the time saving part of it.
So inefficient to do it otherwise.
And again, we understand that there are other ways of meeting people and they can be totally viable for some people.
Yeah.
But if you are trying to be intentional about wanting to have a family and you have a career, or maybe you already have a kid and you want to be very selective, what ends up happening is when you find someone you want to start dating, you have the next 3 to 6 months probably of you really trying to get to know this person, of seeing if all your core values, all the things align that you want to have align. Is this person someone I could see myself with for the rest of my life, right? All of these questions that take months and sometimes, which we don't advise, but take too long to ask these questions.
Yeah.
What happens is if once you get to that time, into that time period, and you go, well, this person actually isn't who I should be moving forward with, and then you go ahead and choose to break it off, hopefully, you've now, I don't want to say wasted, but you've now spent all that time that what we do is find out most of those answers prior to you ever meeting the person. So it's essentially can be a big time saver, as well as finding out where the fish are.
Yeah. And I mean, like, the thing about it is like, it's not just about the time that you invest in that. It's that time has to be productive.
Yeah.
And I think where people really struggle sometimes in that early part of the relationship, this is why so many people fall into situationships that just drag on for forever, is that there seems to be a lot of potential, but they don't have the right questions to ask to elicit the information that they need in order to get down to, is this person actually good for me?
Yeah. And that's where also our coaching comes in too.
Right. So here's really what you get with a matchmaker that you don't get with those other things, right? It's not necessarily about access, although I do think that we cater to maybe a more varied group of people than you might see in apps or in groups and whatever. One, because we actively recruit.
Yeah.
And not just on social media. You know, we've been working to get news out to leadership and other ministries and really put ourselves into places that we're going to be able to capture people who aren't interested in online dating yet or haven't tried that yet. So maybe there's more access to a different pool of people in Synchrony than there would be otherwise. But I think more than that, it's that we have structured the process, one, to minimize the time it takes for you to identify who's actually a good fit for you.
Yeah.
So that you don't waste your time on people that cannot be a good match for you. And so that when you do find someone, you have help knowing what to do next, how to step into the next phase of the relationship, what to verify, what to ask in order to get down to the nitty-gritty of, is this person right for you? And that perspective is coming from someone who has seen both sides.
Yeah.
So we've gotten to know each person in a match individually as people. And we've spent roughly the same amount of time with them. And we've seen them interact in these social settings. And we've talked to them and asked them follow-up questions. And we build out this body of data about individuals that we can then use to coach them in places where they're not strong or where they need some support, right? Something as simple as, hey, adjust your camera angle, or something as deep as, hey, you have a pattern of choosing people who are using addiction to deal with trauma. Have you been to counseling about that?
I think that's what's one of the really beautiful things about what we've been given the opportunity to do, is because when I'm going to say you, because you're most of the time one of the ones doing most of the consultations.
Yeah.
When you meet with these people, they talk about a side of themselves that they cannot be this transparent with almost anyone, because we are an unbiased third party.
Right.
We have a goal of trying to make that person as marketable as possible, and really shine a light on their value, right? And so when they're transparent with you, it also gives you the ability, most of the time, to have the opportunity to speak to them very directly.
Right.
And this is where the coaching comes in. You know, like we're best friends. It might not be received as well from a best friend or from a mom or from someone in the church that says, hey, you know, when you think really hard, you have a very angry looking face, you know? Like,
Right.
you know, whatever it may be, it might not be received as well because they know you have their best interest at hand. Most of the time, as far as I know, we've had nothing but positive reviews from feedback that has been given and has helped move people forward in relationships. So, I mean, we have a very special opportunity to speak to people and on that side of it.
And again, I mean, we tell people this up front, but I'll say it here for anyone who's listening. We're not therapists. So we don't come at this with a toolkit of therapy that we're not equipped to deliver, or pseudopsychology that we don't know enough about, right?
We will tell you when we are in over our head and you need to go to someone who is specialized.
What we can do is recognize patterns that you might not be able to see. So, for example, when you sit down with one of us and we're going through a consultation, we talk about your dating history. And I basically have someone, you know, I'll say, hey, you had, you know, let's say you've been married before, or you said you'd had multiple serious relationships, but they had never progressed to the point of like an engagement, right? Talk to me about those relationships and give me a sense of the bookends. Like, how did it start? What drew you to this person? What were the qualities that made them seem like a good fit? And why did it end? And oftentimes, if someone has had some experience with marriage or dating, there is some kind of a pattern to what they're attracted to and what they find interesting about this person. And it's linked to their values, but they might be using the wrong criteria to choose, right? I'll give you an example, and this is not drawn from any particular consultation, but just to kind of give you a sense of what I might mean. It's not uncommon for women who have gone through maybe a couple of serious relationships or marriages and divorces, who really, really value conventional masculinity in their partners, right? They want to see traditional masculinity. They want someone who is stoic and handy and brawny and very, very manly in the American sense of the term.
Yeah.
Right. And they don't want them to show a lot of emotional weakness. They find that uncomfortable. That's totally fine to have that as a preference, by the way. Like, no harm, no foul. But in seeking that out as the primary attraction in people, they might find men who are using that hypermasculinity to mask very, very deep hurt.
Yeah.
And they're using those kind of, you know, stoic, hard, like hyper manly sensibilities, you know, sort of like cowboyisms, right? To prevent themselves from feeling really, really deep trauma that then later surfaces in their relationship. And we can see that pattern repeat over and over.
Yeah. And from what we've read and seen, it usually stems from like having past trauma and also not having the ability to communicate about it.
Sure.
You know, so that's,
right.
you know, to big factors.
And we're not therapists again, and we're not talking to the other person in this party.
No.
But even just talking to, in this case, like the women who are experiencing that, I can go, oh, I see this pattern, right, of how this has been impacting your life and what this has been doing. So anyway, we are not there to heal people's trauma or help them work through baggage, but we can help them see, here's how what you're looking for, or here's how what you've done in the dating space has resulted in the outcomes you've gotten.
Yeah.
Right. And for people who are completely new to dating, because there are a lot of people who have never dated before, we can kind of demystify the process for them.
Yeah. Especially people who have not had a lot of opportunities to date.
Yeah.
We've recognized have, I don't want to say fairy taled, but like have this idea of what a relationship should look like.
Right. Like stereotypical.
Yeah. Stereotypical, dating relationship. And sometimes we are a little bit of dream crushers. We're like, well, it doesn't always work out that way, you know?
Yeah. I don't think we dream crush too hard,
Not
but usually
dream crush, but bring things to reality, especially specifically in the inexperienced, like
right.
that we try to bring normalcy to it though, and make it feel normal
and help people prioritize. I think
Yeah.
like, women want someone who's tall, dark, and handsome, right? Men want a 10 who can sing, who can, do all this stuff, who also understands sports and likes cars or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm painting with massively broad stereotypical brushes here. We can come into the space and be like, okay, that's totally fine. Which of these is the most important to you? So, everyone will say, like, a lot of times someone will say, like, it's really important to me to be a parent. I'm like, okay, is having biological children the only way you want to be a parent?
Yeah.
Are you open to other forms of parenting?
Are you willing to be a step parent?
Right.
Yeah.
If I introduced you to someone who physiologically didn't think they were capable of conceiving or of parenting, of fathering a child, but really wanted to be a parent, are they an option for you or not?
Yeah.
We can help present the scenarios and present the critical questions that help people dig down to what is the real root of what they want.
Yeah.
And sometimes after those conversations, people realize, oh, like, I've been looking for the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just, you go into a dating app or a dating website, you post your profile, and you're back in the echo chamber of what you've always looked for, what they've always looked for. It's that same cycle over and over again.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need someone who is a bit of an outsider to the process to come in and say, like, but have you considered it this way?
Yeah.
And that can be really helpful.
If he's a 10 in terms of personality and what you're looking for in a husband, but he has a bad hairline, is he still a 10?
Yeah. Okay. So matchmaking compared to other dating strategies, right? You get maybe a different access pool of people, right?
Yep.
A different pond to fish in, so to speak.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And you get a coach who's going to help identify those patterns, help you break away from cycles that haven't been helpful to you in your dating process, give you some strategies for how to make changes going forward. So that's always really helpful. And then I think another component that's important to call out is the level of vetting.
This is also a big difference between us as a matchmaker and Facebook, dating sites, apps. We have someone who has personally vetted people. And that's not saying that people can't lie. And we do soft background checks on people, like if there's something that has been raised as a concern,
Yeah.
Or if they talk about maybe their past. But I think that's what gives a lot of people peace of mind, and also people will enjoy their privacy too. So
Sure. So And just to kind of clarify for anyone who isn't familiar, like we don't do a full-fledged background check,
No.
like on everyone as a matter of process. And right now we don't do pastoral verifications, right?
We're trying to work our way towards that, but we're not there
I
yet.
think that's something that I'd like to do. And honestly, I'd like to do a background check too, just to kind of, have that down. It's just the logistical challenge of it right now with just the two of us working on this part-time.
Yeah,
I think
it's the overhead we're trying to figure out.
Right. So that's something that we can look at for the future. But even aside from that, right, let's just compare what we do versus what you might experience if you bumped into someone at a big conference.
Yeah.
Right. If you meet someone in person for the first time in an apostolic space, you might meet their friends. You might see how they interact with some people. You might get to see them in an altar. All of that matters. All of that's important. That's great. You don't get to hear from them necessarily until they start to tell you, like, what church they go to, what's their relationship with their pastor, how involved are they in ministry, what kind of things are they doing in their church, what are their expectations for someone's church involvement, how they talk about other people, how they talk about past partners.
Yeah.
We hear all of that in the first call.
Yeah.
So we start to dig into, imagine, getting to ask the question, like, walk me through every serious dating relationship you've had and what happened, right?
Yeah.
How people talk about their partners in those conversations
Shines a big light.
It's a very big indicator to me of like, okay, do I need to do some extra due diligence here? Is this person healthy for someone, right? And there have been times where I've said, hey, and sometimes it's not because of a concern like that, but after a consultation, a couple of alarm bells have gone off for me about this person's readiness or this person's safety. And I'll say, hey, was it okay if I speak to your pastor? Like, I'd like to just get confirmation from them about, your attendance, your involvement. We have disqualified people based on, things that we are able to kind of suss out after getting to know them. And, we've worked with people who, we've had to put on pause until we could verify more information about them.
Yeah.
So we're able to provide an additional fence.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there aren't people who could craftily get over that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is my biggest prayer right now is just like, Lord, I want you to help bring the hidden things to light, like protect people, help us to keep people safe. That's extremely important to me.
Yeah.
And I think we'll be able to build more and more into that as we go, and we're able to kind of scale things. But even without all the background check functionality and all the pastoral verification, what we do right now is more than what you're going to be able to do over a Facebook page.
Yeah. And again, nothing against the Facebook pages, but it's just the nature of how it's set up.
Yeah.
If you've had one Bible study from an apostolic believer, you could probably sneak your way in to most Facebook groups by saying, I go to X apostolic church and I understand what you're looking for when you ask about tongues or baptism or so almost anyone could get in if they know how to talk like an apostolic. Right. And so it's harder to verify who someone is and if they're really being authentic.
Yeah. And people are like, well, you don't ask a ton of questions about scriptural belief or whatever on the survey. And we do ask a few, and some of them are kind of sneaky because we want to make sure we can kind of see that people are actually versed in apostolic doctrine before they come to us.
Yeah.
But during the consultation, when I'm talking to people about their expectations for their spouses, right? Someone who says, hey, I'm really looking for someone who is going to be like this biblical figure, or who's going to act like this, or who's going to demonstrate this, or someone who serves in this way, that says something very different to me than like, well, I just want someone who kind of goes to church and I want him to be able to be there, right? Like, you can tell when someone is serious about their walk based on what they ask for.
Yeah.
So I just think that's important to call out. Ideally, if pastors had all the time in the world, right? And none of them do. All of them are working on too few hours in the day, right? If pastors had all the time in the world, it'd be lovely if they were the ones having these conversations with their saints dating prospects. And some of them are having a lot of the kind of research conversations with people, but that's not always feasible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're here to kind of just be an additional layer of vigilance.
Yeah.
And when you're in a dating scenario, it's very easy, especially if you're following your attraction, to get sweaty palmed and nervous and giggly in front of someone who is a new prospect and kind of lose your sense of, lose some of that instinct, or that instinct
Oh,
of,
sure.
Hey, that's kind of a red flag, or that feels
I
a
don't
little
really
off.
want to ruin the I don't want to ruin the flow of the conversation by
Right.
asking a really intense question right now,
It's easy to second guess yourself. You don't want to pass judgment. We're happy to
Yeah.
we're happy to critically think about those things for you.
We ask a lot of the hard questions.
Mm-hmm.
And and I'm going to geek out about this a little bit.
Yeah.
And for all the longtime listeners, I'm sorry. If you have a particular situation in which you know that a future dating prospect might have issues with,
Yeah.
let me give an example. Say you have a loved one that you're taking care of and you can't move from your city.
Sure.
Or maybe you have a child from a previous marriage that you share custody with your ex-husband or wife with and can't move for the next 7 or 8 years. Like there are particular situations that make your situation slightly more difficult in terms of finding someone to be willing to move into your life, right?
Yeah.
When you're going to a conference and that person's trying to talk to you, you don't want that to be the first topic of conversation of like, hey, by the way, do you care about this before we continue this relationship? Like before we, and they're like, oh, you're weird. Leave me alone.
Right.
Like you don't, sometimes people guard themselves from talking about the real things in a effort of not scaring away someone.
Yeah.
And then they go for months and months of talking to someone before they talk about the real things that are important to them.
Right.
That end up causing a separation in the relationship because of them not wanting or being able to move to where you are.
Right.
And now you've just wasted 6 months of your life, 8 months of your life.
Yeah.
And so what's so cool about like matchmaking and what we're doing is when you are going into a conversation or what we call a date, you know that the person that is about to talk to you is already with the permission. You've already given Megan permission to talk about this information. They know about your situation. They know that they like just use the example of like if I had a kid, right? And I can't move for 7 more years. They are willing to consider talking to me because sorry, let me start it over. They are willing to talk to me even though I have a kid and I'm not willing to move, and they are willing to consider moving to where I am.
Yeah, we've already vetted the logistics.
Yeah, and so you can now go into that conversation and say, do I like this person? You already know you have a lot of similar values. You already know you have a lot of the big red flags or a lot of the big conversation or the relationship breakers are already out of the way.
Yeah.
And so now you can just go and just be there and try to see if I can just get along with this person.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a bit, and that's why I think it's such a big time saver, is because you're not having to wait months to tell this person the big things. You are going right into it knowing that they are willing to think about your situation.
Yeah. And, people... Like in people's consultations, I ask a lot of questions about like, what do you have in your life or in your past that would give people pause, right?
Yeah.
And people have gifted me with a lot of information about, health challenges, right? Or family dynamic complications or trauma that they may have experienced at this point. And I never share any of that information. It's stuff that I keep in the back of my mind. But for example, like, the joke I tell people is like, let's say I was giving you a consultation and you disclosed to me that you had 7 toes on one foot.
Oh, sure.
I'm not going to tell everyone that you have 7 toes on one foot, but I'm not going to match you with the person who insists on marrying someone with just 10 toes.
Yeah.
So I have the ability to screen out people based on your preferences, and also what they feel safe. So everyone in the room is comfortable.
Yeah.
And for some people who have really been through significant challenges, that is priceless, because the fear and anxiety that comes with putting up a difficult part of your testimony for someone to pass judgment on, right?
Yeah.
After you've built an emotional connection to them, and then you have to come to them and say, hey, I struggled with homosexuality, or hey, I struggled with drug addiction. I, have been bankrupt before in my life. I've been homeless before in my life. I've been abused. Are you okay with that? Imagine that coming off the table, right? And you already go into the conversation knowing, if I connect with this person, they're going to be safe for me.
Yeah.
And
Well, can I give one more example?
Sure.
And I think this is beautiful, especially for people who are later in life. We've had people come to us and say, hey, I've experienced devastating loss. I've lost my husband. I've lost my wife, and to death, obviously.
Yeah.
I know that could have been misinterpreted. And I would really like, if I were to meet someone, I would ideally, in a best case scenario, be able to meet someone who has also experienced loss.
Yeah, meet someone who understands where I'm coming from.
Yeah, because I want them to have grace for me missing my former wife or husband,
Right.
despite me being married to someone else.
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
To know going into a conversation that person may have already experienced loss in some way, and that it gives peace of mind to know that this person might give me that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's such a beautiful, in a sad way, obviously, but a beautiful way to just like give someone peace of mind.
Yeah. So yeah, it takes a lot of the uncertainty out of the process.
Yeah.
We don't really let people linger in situationships,
Yeah, that's another. We try to encourage people to keep things moving.
Right. When we match people, I follow up with them after a couple of weeks, after a month or two, and there's a point where I ask, like, hey, if this isn't a serious relationship yet, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Do you need to come in and talk? Like, let's have that conversation so you're not stuck in something that's not serving you. So it's also that layer of accountability too, of like, hey, you deserve more than a situationship.
And again, it's an unbiased third party.
Yeah. You deserve the chance at a fulfilling, healthy relationship. Let's get you into a place where you can have that conversation.
Yeah.
So, I think the other thing we should talk about with why matchmaking is like, does it work? Because that's always people's question, right? Like, okay,
sure.
Okay, so it's not an app or whatever. Like, does it work? Right now, today, for context, I have 22 people at the moment who are in progress of going on a date. Either they've had a match selected, and I'm either working with them to write a bio. They've got their their date on the calendar, whatever. Those are just the people that are in progress between people who are waiting and people who are in a relationship. So like, those folks are in progress toward a date. We have multiple couples who are engaged. Many more that are in serious dating relationships. So right now, I think
we have a couple weddings coming up.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think we took a look back and said, like, the proportion of people in the pipeline who had been matched at least one time, right, with someone. And I think it was like a 20% match rate.
Yeah.
Right. Which I don't know the statistics of how frequently you would match with a dating prospect on like Match.com or something. It might be less, it might be more.
I'm kind of curious of what the dating app stats are too.
Yeah, there's probably data we could find on that. I think I remember like eHarmony used to put out a stat or something. I don't remember what it was like. But at the same time, it's like, whether or not the matches that you would find in those spaces are actually viable, I think is a big question.
Oh, sure.
Right. The matches that people are making through us are matches that could lead them to a relationship and to a marriage. You know, those big questions are already answered.
Yeah.
So I think it is working. I still think we're learning a lot. You know, we are now, July of 2025 will be 2 years of matchmaking work where we've been talking to people. October of 2025 will be 2 years of actual matches.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we did our first match in October of 2023.
This is the beginning of March.
Yeah.
We have been charging for our services for a full year.
Yeah. Yeah. This is our first full year of having a...
Yeah, as of today, actually. Wow, I didn't realize that.
Congrats. Happy anniversary.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, a full year of a paid pipeline.
Yeah, because when we originally started...
we did our beta testing
We did our
phase.
beta testing for free.
Yeah, for like 9 months.
For like 8 or 9 months, so...
Yeah, so we're still learning a lot. You guys have been so gracious in giving us feedback and just helping us learn and teaching us about what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And we still have so many more things that we want to do and try and tweak. But yeah, I think it does work.
Yeah.
I think it works in a uniquely apostolic way. I put this up on our stories a while ago, but it made me so happy. So one of our couples that got engaged not long ago, she messaged me on Instagram and was like, hey, we went and did our premarital counseling today. And they were sitting with a licensed therapist who used some kind of testing parameter. I forget what it was. Basically like a quiz of some sort to
see their compatibility.
Yeah, to evaluate, how lined up they were and the things that were important for building a healthy relationship. And she said, she's like, our therapist was really excited because she says we're very, very compatible and that you did a good job. And I was like, yay.
Yeah.
And I don't know how watertight that assessment is. So
sure.
Who knows? But it's little things like that, where another one of our engaged couples, like I remember talking to them and them being just like, everyone who meets our partner, right, says that it's like they were made for us.
Yeah.
And we're not going to knock it out of the park like that every time.
Oh, sure.
But I do believe that it's working. I do believe that the matches that are coming from this are values driven, that those couples are going to go transform the world,
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful partnerships are starting to form that I think are just going to be incredibly impactful.
Yeah. I'm also in awe of the people that have come to us saying how much they've learned about themselves and during this process.
Yeah.
And that's not me trying to pat us on the back or anything like that. I'm just saying like the way that you talk and the way that you try to get questions out of people or get answers out of people, you really force people to think very deeply about their values.
Yeah.
And so there's some people that have said, I've never thought about this stuff before. And it's really given people, even if they haven't been matched through us, through our services, it's given some people the tools to find people on their own because they've had the ability to say, hey, I know what's important to me now.
Right. They have the language to say, okay, I need to identify my values and understand what matters to me in these spaces.
Yeah.
And that's huge for us. Like, again, we've said this before, our goal is not to matchmake every single apostolic single.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be great, but it's to end loneliness in a church.
Right. And that's going to be beyond just what we can do here. We want it to be accessible to people anywhere at any stage. Yeah. So I think it's working.
Yeah.
We've had some amazing just testimonies come out of it in the last, year period that we've been doing this, a little more. And I just can't wait to see what the next year of it is going to hold.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth reminding people the goal of this podcast, if you're a longtime listener and you're like, yeah, I mean, we've already bought into this, we know all this. This is a great set of tidbits. If you have friends or family that you feel like are concerned about this or are unsure, this is a great thing to take them.
What's funny is if you are a longtime listener and you heard our first time us talking about why matchmaking before, I feel like it was more theoretical.
Yeah.
Now we have data. Now we have more experience under our belts.
Yeah.
Like we have hundreds and hundreds of people we have talked to.
Yeah.
We have now actually engagements that are like in the next several months. We're going to have three or four marriages that are happening in the next couple months. So this theoretically should be our first and only year of matchmaking where we haven't had a wedding. And that's only because relationships have to have time to develop.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I put up a story question. This might be a good way to kind of wrap.
Yeah.
I put up a story question earlier about like inviting people to ask questions about the matchmaking process.
Yeah.
And someone asked the question, what do you say when people, basically, I'm paraphrasing, what do you say when people are skeptical that a match-made relationship could be of God because it didn't happen spontaneously, right?
Oh, sure.
And this is like maybe the last key component, right? What I said in the story, and I'll repeat here, is that humans are the connective link that God uses, not just to connect people to each other.
Yeah.
Humans connect people to God.
Yeah.
Like God uses preachers to administer the word. He uses evangelists. He uses us as bearers of the gospel to go out and connect people to the Almighty.
Yeah, it's that person that's going and doing Bible studies in the prison ministries.
Right.
It's the people going to the nursing homes and really praying by people's bedsides.
The core tenet of evangelism is that connection to God doesn't just happen. It takes works, right?
Yeah.
It takes people going out and spreading the word and doing work on behalf of the gospel. If it takes that kind of human interaction to connect individual human beings with their all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful, creative God, right? Why do we think it's so weird that humans would be responsible for connecting other humans to spouses?
Yeah.
It's not weird, right? Fun fact, signing up for a dating app does not mean that no humans are involved in connecting you.
Yeah.
There is somebody, some developer somewhere sitting down, writing that algorithm that's calculating exactly how you're going to, what profiles are going to display for you. And they're sweating bullets at some point over this isn't working right, or this person, I want to make sure we get this, and is it going to work better if we do this versus this? There's a ton of human work and investment in every single one of these dating processes. Conferences, holy cannoli. The time and effort it takes to run a conference like that is just insane. So humans have always been the architects of our connections.
I have a cool relation to the realtor.
Oh, yeah.
As I said at the beginning, we've been compared. I usually compare us to a realtor. A realtor just takes what current houses are on the market and shows you what's on the market.
Sure.
The realtor did not make those houses come on the market. Any other realtor in that town, or even not in that town, can show you those same houses. It's still you can even not even use a realtor and drive around and try to find the for sale signs or use Zillow.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're the one making the choice of which avenue you are trying to find those houses.
Right.
And you still have to be the one to know what you're looking for in the house. And also if you're going to go forward and buy into that house.
Yeah. So basically
also not comparing people to property, but
yeah. So yeah, basically the idea that a relationship has to be a meet cute or a spontaneous random act of fate in order for it to be a legitimate, destined relationship is bogus.
Yeah.
Humans have always been the architects of healthy relationships. We have been as a culture in the business of connecting people for marriage purposes for our entire existence, right?
Yeah.
And even we have biblical examples of that. We talk a lot about those early on in the podcast if you want to go back and listen. But yeah, so all that to say is that there's nothing wrong with using any of those dating platforms or all of them, right? I'm not mad if people tell me that they're still on the Facebook groups and they're still going to the conferences and they're still using the dating apps. Like put an egg in every basket, right? That's totally great. I think it's important to make yourself as available as you can be. But maybe it's time to try something new if those strategies haven't paid off for you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we recapped all that.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
I think this is our first time doing an episode that we did near the beginning.
Yeah, this is maybe our first like repeat topic.
Yeah.
We won't make this like a huge habit. We like talking about new stuff, but
Yeah.
we figured it was time.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about just like good old matchmaking and
Yeah.
how it works in a while. So, kind of an announcement, but more of a request for people.
Okay.
I was in a conversation earlier this week. Actually, I was on a date that I had hosted for a couple, and we were wrapping it up, and they were talking about listening to the podcast, and they made a couple of comments about like, oh yeah, like I had a lot to say about this one episode or this other episode that I had a lot of opinions about. If you are a person who listens to podcasts and has big thoughts or, conflicting opinions or whatever, we really want to hear them.
Yeah, we do.
We really, really do. So this is, ideally it's a conversation about our dating culture, and we want to invite people to really participate in that and engage with us in that. So there are a handful of ways that you can do that. Obviously, you can come onto social media. We're happy to chat there on Facebook messages or Instagram messages. We do have an email, questions@synchronyproject.com. It's always in the description, and you can send questions or commentary there. We have had a couple of people email us there, but it's pretty quiet usually. So,
or you can go on YouTube and just post a comment on there.
I'd love that because I'd love for other people to feel like they have the space to do that as well.
Yeah.
Not only does it help with engagement, it helps people see the video, which is important. It also gives people, if you have a strong opinion about something we say, other people might share that opinion and they might feel seen in that. So please, take an opportunity to go share your thoughts with us. We do really value that. We value your feedback, and your spicy opinions. We want to hear, what you think.
Yeah.
I think our only other announcement is about West Palm.
Yeah. So we are going to my old stomping grounds, down in West Palm, April 5th.
Yeah, that's Saturday.
Yeah, April 5th. And we will be doing a synchrony talk.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about loneliness, about the single experience.
Yep.
It's for any single of any age, even if you're not really interested in dating. It's more of a wide-ranging topic about our research into singleness.
Yeah. Sanctuary of the Palm Beaches
is the one hosting it.
Yeah.
And information about the address and where it's going to be and the time and everything is in the description. So if you are in South Florida or planning to be in the area during that time and you want to pop by, we'd love to get a chance to see you there.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay. Hey, babe.
Yeah.
I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you for tolerating me today.
I will tolerate you every day gladly. That was in my vows. No, just kidding. No, it's been a rough week because we've been sick.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we've both been kind of running on fumes today.
Oh, yeah.
But I would much rather be in that position with you than anybody else on earth.
Oh, thanks, babe. You're stuck with me, so.
I am. That's true.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening, and we will see you later.
Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.